And happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you for tuning into K4CO Radio. We have another amazing interview here this afternoon with us. Thank you for tuning in. So today we have Lisa Switzer here with us from Western States Cancer Research. Thank you for joining us today, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, this is such a treat. We've had a couple different people, one other person come in earlier and tell us a little bit about your organization, and you are so involved in the community. So if you want to launch in and tell us about Western States, kind of the broad strokes and what you all do inside of the community.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. So Western States Cancer Research, NCORP, is a part of the NCI, and the NCORP part, which we never use because it's very long, is National Cancer Institute Community Oncology Research Program. And at the heart of our mission is to bring cancer clinical trials into local communities so that when patients are already immunocompromised, they don't have to travel great distances to get the treatment that they need because they're already pretty sick, and it's difficult to get to Mayo or MD Anderson or some of those bigger sites that you hear about. So our job is to bring clinical trials to physicians to talk to the patients about, or to patients if they call us to find out what's available to them.
Okay. And this actually was founded back in 1983. Is that correct?
It is. And it was a movement back in the day when you could only get clinical trials at the national level. And in fact, our founding father was one of the first people to go to the NCI and say, it's great that we have these at the national level, but we need to get them into the community. And so that's how the NCORPs, at that time, they were called they had a different name, but that's how they were started. So we were one of the first in the country.
Okay, that is amazing. How long have you personally been with the organization?
I've been with them 8.5 years.
Okay. Oh, you are well versed. You're definitely I would put you in the expert column there.
Well, I don't know about that. Oncology is really complicated. So anybody who calls themselves an expert is either really a genius or somewhat deluded.
Don't those go hand in hand sometimes? Oh, I love it. Well, what is your role on kind of a day-to-day basis with the organization?
Well, they let me be the CEO and executive director. So my job really is to let the experts who work in the actual clinical areas do their job. So I oversee the organization. I do the business parts of it, making partnerships happen with other clinical sites and pharmaceutical companies, and just oversee the day-to-day running of the organization.
Okay. And you said you're doing trials within communities. Are you in a certain part of Colorado? Are you Denver centric, or do you travel all over the state?
That's a really good question. So we're Denver centric. You can sort of think of the metro corridor. It's really difficult to get clinical trials into remote areas, which is part of our mission because there's not support to run them there. And so it's unfortunate because we believe in equal access to healthcare and to clinical trials. And I always say we have both a moral imperative and a research imperative. The moral imperative is that when someone gets a cancer diagnosis, they have a right to know about every available option to them. So if nobody's talking about clinical trials, most people don't ask because they don't know about them or they're scared of them. The research imperative is that if research outcomes are going to reflect society writ large, then the participants who are in them should look like society at writ large. And so trying to diversify patient participation is a bit of a challenge. Now, we do have sites in Fairbanks, Alaska, and in Port Townsend, Washington, Paducah, Kentucky, and we just opened 2 new sites in California that serve very diverse populations. So we're really excited about that.
Oh, that's amazing. That's wonderful. You're starting to go national. Mm-hmm. That's very great. When you say resources, my brain is saying you need hospitals, you need physicians. What other resources are you in need of, or that these communities need more of?
Another good question. you can't do these things because they're very complicated clinical trials without a real team. So you need the mid-levels, you need the front desk people at sites, you need all of these folks to help get a patient to go on to a trial. And then, of course, there's financial resources. We receive a grant from the NCI, but it does not cover our costs like most nonprofits. We are a 501c3 standalone NCORP. And so we have to do fundraising. We write grants to other grant makers besides the government. And then we have individual donors, and then we have a couple of fundraisers. But research isn't exactly a warm, fuzzy topic for people. So we have to really talk about the patient story. And I will say our NCORP is very patient-centric. Patients are not data points to us. We never call them subjects. They can be participants. We will use that term, but I'm pretty strict with my team. Once they go on to a study and we know who they are, we call them by name, first name, and of course keeping everything HIPAA compliant and protecting the patient's information. But when we're talking about them in the staff meetings and when we're looking at their charts, they're real people. We know their journeys and we're on the journey with them. And for me, that is probably the reason I've stuck with this job is we are mission driven, and I just believe that these human beings should get every treatment available to them if they're eligible.
It is really interesting when you say the difference kind of right there between, when you talk about a lot of studies, a lot of research and everything like that, for a long time it's always been, it's all about the data. They're not people. You don't call them by names. It's subjects. There's the control. There's, the experimental. And so it's very interesting that you kind of go into that. It's just like, no, these are people right here. And I just wanted to verify. So this research and these studies that people are in, is this pre-FDA approval type studies, pre-FDA research, not, these treatments and everything not yet
So
available?
No, that's a good question, Josh. Thank you. Our studies are looking, well, there are 4 categories of studies. And phase 1 is when you're testing for toxicity, and that's when patients are really sick and pretty much usually don't have another option. Phases 2 and 3, which are what we do, are when you're looking for efficacy. So many things, it's passed through many hoops to get to us. And we're just looking to see if we tweak this, if we tweak that. So the process for a study being opened for us is that there are research bases in this country where the smart people sit around and say, what if we look at this type of cancer and we apply this novel therapy? And they develop a study, they write it, and a protocol, and then they'll send it to the NCI, and the NCI will look at it and say, let us run this past our sites. Mm-hmm. And if that's a feasibility kind of study with them. And if the sites say, yeah, we think this would be a good study, then they make it available to us. And then we, at the local level, run our own feasibility on it to see if we have physician engagement, if we think we have a patient population, if we have the means, like the actual equipment resources to run the study, because you do have to have a hospital sometime with studies. You do have to have an infusion room. We have drugs on site for us with different studies that we will take to the sites to get to the patient. So you have to have an IP specialist, investigational product specialist. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. And we're very, very careful about what studies we open, because you don't want to open one and have one patient on it. We will do that if a doctor says, look, this is all there is that will work. We will absolutely do it. But typically, that's not the way it goes.
That was actually my question, is when you're doing these trials, how many people are usually involved as far as, and I'll call them patients. I think that was the word you used. How big is the group usually with trials?
It varies from study to study. So some of these studies are looking at very niche questions, and all studies have what is called inclusion-exclusion criteria, and that's just what it sounds like. There are some things that allow them to be in the study, and there are some things that could get them to the place where, as we're looking at them, we can say they're ineligible. I always like to joke that you could get a patient so far through, like, yes, they have all the blood that's right and all they've done the surgeries right, but they fell off their horse when they were 5 and broke their leg, and now they're not now they're excluded. And literally there are things like that. If they have broken bones, that might be something that says that's not going to work with this drug because this drug can make your bones brittle. So that IE criteria is really narrow, and sometimes you can only find 2 or 3 patients. Other studies, you can find a lot more patients for them because they're asking a bigger question.
Okay. Where do you find that these people are usually coming to you? Is this like, hey, I was just diagnosed, let's go on this journey together? Or is it, hey, we've tried a whole bunch of different doctors and prescriptions at this point, and I'm a year in? Where do you usually find during their journey?
So most of them come through either their physician, or we have the ability to go into sites, electronic medical records, EMRs, and we can look at patient information and then say to a doctor, hey, I noticed this patient looks like she might be eligible for this particular study. Can I talk to you about it? So it's either us looking through the patient roster with permission from the site, of course, and going to the physician, or the physician calling us and say, I have a patient presenting with this type of cancer. Do you have a study for me?
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you. For those of you that are just tuning in, we have Lisa Switzer here with us from Western States Cancer Research. We've been chatting with her. We are going to take a quick music break, but please don't go anywhere. They have a couple different fundraising opportunities for you to get involved here with the community, and definitely finding out more about their nonprofit. So here's a little tune for you, and we'll be back here in a couple minutes.
People get involved, and you've been involved with this for a little while, and was there something just internally or in your life that really made you, I need to do this, I need to be a part of this, or what really brought you into it?
Well, I've always been driven by peace and justice. My master's degree was a focus in that, and I just made a decision as a young person that whatever I did for a living, I was going to do to make the world better. So my background has really actually always been in education, at the university level and then at the high school level. I was an administrator after I was a teacher. And then that got kind of rough, and so I started doing development, fundraising, realizing that nonprofits don't do a good job of that. So my whole career has been in the nonprofit world, which does not mean you don't make a profit. It just means you spend your profit in a certain way.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So it's important to know that. And when I came to this organization, I actually was there to do fundraising and fell in love with the idea of equity in healthcare and the fact that that clinical trials are little known. And when I first would speak, I would say in a room, how many people here know someone who has cancer? And hands would go up. And as I've developed in my career and my time there, I now say, who in this room doesn't know anyone who has cancer? And no one raises their hands.
Right.
And I just let the silence sit for a minute, because cancer it just keeps coming no matter what we do. Now, that being said, there's so much hope, and I think that's how I've been able to stay. If this was a hopeless thing, then that would be rough. But some cancers that were death sentences 10 years ago are chronic illnesses now, or curable. So there's a lot of hope, and clinical trials bring that to people. They bring them an alternative to standard of care. And as an educator, I feel always compelled to say, you're not a guinea pig. I like to demystify clinical trials. You are not a guinea pig. You will always get standard of care. You might be randomized to the novel therapy or the treatment trial, but you will always get standard of care. And the other thing you get is an enlarged care system. So you would have your regular doctors and the folks at the clinic, but when you go on a clinical trial, you have a team like mine. So you have a clinical research coordinator who goes to every single visit, knows you, knows your kids, your grandkids, knows your bowel movements, knows what you've eaten, knows all those things, and are there to make sure you've dosed properly, that you've shown up, that you remember to say, by the way, I have a rash today. And so this brings them up fourth dimension of support being on a clinical trial. So I've stayed because there is hope and because there's so much education to continue to do. And the last thing I'll say is that there is a justice component to this, where research was done in the past for wrong reasons in malevolent ways to populations that suffered greatly and still have a tremendous fear of clinical trials. And there's a history there that's, systemic. And so we have to constantly, when we're working in communities, build trust, understand who's there, know their fears, figure out how to bring the message. So there's a very soft side to clinical research that I don't think gets talked about enough, and I present the soft side, or represent the soft side of it. How's that?
Yeah, no, that's great. And you actually mentioned justice before on that, and with that you said the right to know about it. And so I'm actually very curious. So, you mentioned that, and this has got to be a massive team, that you guys go into actual records, of course, with the permission to try to find people, team up with doctors and stuff like that. It seems to me somebody who has cancer, is in a certain level of cancer, how they would even find out. Can they even reach out, or is this really just like the doctors, if they are teamed up with somebody or somebody randomly selected? Because a lot of times it feels like, I'm just, okay, I have this and I have this much time. And so you guys make it a point, especially in this community since 1983, really going out there and trying to find these people, or can these patients actually do their own research? How can they be active to try to find you guys and try to find, hey, there's a research clinical trial that I might be approved for?
I love that question, because you touched on this a little bit. A lot of times patients with cancer feel that they have no longer control over their life, their body, their relationships, and giving them a sense of agency is the way to do that is the way you just said. They can look themselves. I would not suggest Googling things, because that makes people really anxious. I love Google, but it's better to go to clinicaltrials.gov, go to our website where we have all of our trials listed by disease sites, and disease site means what type of cancer you have, and they can call us directly. And then we will say, who's your treating physician? And if they don't have a doctor, then we can try to facilitate that relationship. But that ability to self-advocate, to be educated, again, that comes with a certain level of education and a certain place in society that isn't broad enough for me. I think that we want everybody to be able to do that. And in terms of their right to know, we have many things translated into multiple languages now. When a patient has consented to go on study, there is an informed consent, and that is the most important part of going on to a study, and it falls under good clinical practices, GCP, and that is where the entire consent is read out loud to the patient, almost word for word. And if they speak Spanish, we have it in Spanish. If they speak Japanese, we will get it translated into Japanese. And that's not an easy thing, because translating some of those big words into other languages, but we pay a company that is medically educated to do that. And then the patient can ask all the questions they want, so that when they get to the end of it and they sign, they have been told what the study's about, what the side effects can be, they don't talk about prognosis, but they do talk about what to expect while they're on study, so that there is a way for them to feel like they can say no at the end of that. They have every right to do that.
That's informed consent, exactly. You got to know everything about it.
Exactly.
You had gone, we had talked a little bit off air about how vital and important it is to have a good team. I was looking at the website here with the NCORP team, and you have over 20 people. And I'm sure there are lots more that are involved, behind the scenes that aren't here. But you have a very broad, executive team. You have your directors, you have the clinical research coordinators. And how do you all kind of find that cohesive team to work together through the trials?
Another really exciting question. So, as the CEO, I've been very intentional on who we bring onto our team. So we have, when I interview people, I say we have a culture of compassion. We are an open and affirming, inclusive community. And if they don't know what I'm talking about, they probably don't get a second interview. 20 sounds like a lot, but it's small in a way. And our team is very close. There are mistakes made all the time, and we have to give grace where that happens. You know, someone misses a signature or someone misses a deadline. The quality team isn't a kind of team who's going to come and say, hey, you messed this up, because they know each other. Mm-hmm. We play together, we break bread together. Might be a weird term, but that's how I think of it. And so it makes it easier when you hit bumps. And so I actually screen every applicant unless I'm out of town or something. I screen them myself. I'm in the interviews. And I'm not to say this is built around me, because it's not. Now that we have this team, they all know what to look for. I don't have to be there. And case in point, I was gone for 2 weeks, and our COO and director interviewed 2 people that came to me, which is typically how an organization does things. I just like to be in there on the front end. It saves time. And the person was lovely, and we ended up hiring her. So, but I think it's important to have a team that you respect. I say I am a leader who has a round table kind of mentality. Everybody around the table is equally important. We couldn't do what we do without them. I don't go to speak to doctors without a clinical person with me. So it makes my job easier. It might sound like it's really brilliant, but it's honestly all about, ease. But it's also really fun. I want to go to work in a place where people are happy, and patients can hear that and feel it and read it if they're not. So that's important in the end of it all, because it is about the patients when it's all said and done.
Completely. I 100% agree with you. Even in a for-profit or non-profit, having that cohesive team with great communication, mutual respect. I love the word grace, because we are all humans. Sometimes you're having a rough day, and sometimes you're having a great day. And so it's to be there to support each other through all of it, especially with dealing with cancer and trials like this that maybe take a little more sensitivity at moments, to understand that we are here. I love the word compassion too. It takes that compassion and the passion, if you will, and the hope. I am such a component. I wish I'm always looking for tangible hope when I can, to keep driving, the force behind it, that this is leading to something really positive and that could change people's lives.
I want to just say right here, so I don't forget this, that so many patients who go on study, when I interview them, because some of them love to tell their story and want to, when I say, why did you decide you want to do this, they say, this may not help me, but it will help my children, it will help other people, and those people are heroes in my mind. I mean, yes, they think they have a better chance for themselves. There's no, that's a given, but they really do recognize that they are contributing to something. And again, talk about advocacy and agency and feeling like you're doing something. It's a really great thing for people when they recognize that that's their motivation.
Absolutely. If you can help one person, that's usually my mentality, is if this will benefit one other person, whether they're hearing this right now, this could spark an idea and say, boy, I've been struggling a long time and I need to reach out, or I need to check in with a friend or a family member. It only takes, it's all of these little branches of networking. And again, I use this frequently, but this is my dad's phrase. If we all do a little lifting, it would be a better place. And that, to me, what it's always about. Very much community centric. So thank you for everything that you're doing. It is, I can tell that you are very passionate about it, very educated as well. Did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, when it does come with the subject. I hate to say the word subjects, but because it's more of a,
They are
you know
people.
what I mean? They're
Yes.
people.
Right.
It's just that psychology. I went to school for stuff like that. But how far does your spectrum of cancer reach now? Is this are you focused in on certain types, certain areas of cancer, or is this something where you guys are looking at pretty much any research out there, any team out there, any study out there, experimental group out there for any type of cancer, or is there a certain type of area that you guys are looking at?
I do want to say about the nomenclature. The scientists and in the research bases are within their right to refer to people as subjects, and that's usually where that word is used. So even though it makes me uncomfortable because that's not the realm, that's not the phase of it that I'm in, that is where you would hear that more. And when I say we're about patients, I should also say we are about maintaining the integrity of the study. And that is what the NCI, I mean, yes, they're about patients too, but we are about patient protection. And then we want to make sure, the reason you want to follow these patients is to make sure they don't get bumped off of a study because they missed a dose or they didn't show up for something. So at every single one of those visits, our researchers are taking down information and reporting it back to the research base. And that's where they'll pull all those statistics together to come up with outcomes of a study and then a new treatment, if you will. And as far as the types of cancer, our NCORP and most NCORPs will look at any type of cancer. We just have to run it through feasibility to make sure, as I said earlier, that we have the means to do it. So if it's an acute leukemia study, which we have a high percentage of that in this area, you need a hospital stay for that. And we're not in a hospital, we're a standalone. So we'd have to do a lot of contriving to make something like that work. So we run it through a very robust feasibility process internally. If someone comes to us with the study, make sure that each of our departments is capable of doing their job, and then we'll open it.
Wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. Thank you for those of you, if you're just tuning in, this is a special K4CO radio interview with Lisa Switzer with Western States Cancer Research. We've been talking about the different trials that they offer, and we're going to take another quick music break here for you. And when we come back, I will talk about what the future has in hold and definitely how you can get involved as a listener if you want to become and be involved in a trial or know someone that might actually benefit from it. So keep listening, and we'll be back here after the music break. Those of you that maybe missed the first half, we do upload all of our interviews on our YouTube page. So definitely you can always go to our website, k4coradio.com, and click on YouTube. Usually takes us a couple days to get that interview up, but this is definitely worth hearing from the beginning. So much education. And, as Lisa, as you pointed out, and I was thinking about this the whole time, and it's so powerful. It used to be, how many of you know someone or personally, family, friends that's been affected by cancer? And it's so powerful to say, just that silence for those that aren't affected. It is. I know so many people. My husband's mom passed away, including his uncle as well, from cancer, and that's it's a normal thing that we hear about. So these trials are so incredibly important and very vital to go through to find, as you talked about, the hope and find the cure and find a solution. So thank you for all of your involvement in the community. I know it's no easy task on a day-to-day basis to do this. So thank you for everything that you're doing for our communities.
Well, we're so glad to be doing it. And again, thank you for this opportunity, because it's really not about us as much as it is getting information to people who maybe don't know how to find it. So thank you. We really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And we hadn't mentioned this yet. So it's, if they want to email you, it's info@westernstatesncorp.org. Correct? Okay. And your phone number on the website here is 303-777-2663. So if you all have been listening and want to ask more questions, get involved, you can definitely send Lisa an email or call that number, and one of her teammates will help you and guide you to the right people. So you've personally been involved for 8 years. What are kind of your goals and missions coming up here in the next 6 months or year? What do you hope to see is going to happen with your organization?
Well, we are expanding. We have sites in California now and up the West Coast. And radiation is an area that it's hard to find clinical trials for radiation, except for through the research bases where our studies come from. So one of the sites in California actually reached out to us and said, we want to do research. Can we join your NCORP, which is always the best thing that can happen. You know, we didn't even have to look for them. They came looking for us. So expanding, but not just in radiation, just getting the opportunity to even talk about clinical trials in underserved populations, remote areas. And with that, there's some challenges because there's a technology divide sometimes. Just because somebody has a cell phone maybe and lives in a village outside of Fairbanks, which is where one of our sites is, they may not have a printer or a scanner or know how to do some of the things they need to do. There's not enough yet in-home healthcare related to oncology. You can get some oncology treatments at home, but getting more of that I would like to see so that people don't have to travel. You can do some, chemotherapy at home, but you need to be monitored. So I think having the world of clinical trials expanded into areas where it's not known about right now, patient-wise, but then also making sure that physicians know, and this includes PCPs, primary care physicians, if they get a patient who looks like they might have something going on and they're going to refer them to an oncologist, there's only one thing they have to say. Ask if there's a clinical trial that might be right for you. And I say that every single time I speak to an audience. That's all you have to ask. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to know anything. Just ask that one sentence.
Right.
And hopefully your doctor, I hope PCPs will offer that to the patients they have when they're referring them. And then that the oncologist they go to is willing to look into that opportunity for them.
Are you, and this might be a tough question, sorry, are you finding that doctors and hospital staff are they moving in the right direction? I'll soften the question.
Honestly, the medical community is amazing and struggling. The level of turnover is extremely high since COVID. Burnout is really high. Being an oncologist is not an easy job, as you can imagine. And for some of them that are in sort of the more bureaucratic systems, they have 20 minutes with a patient, and that's all. And they're just moved right along. And so for them to add one more thing to the conversation sometimes is really challenging. So even if their heart's there, the system may not allow it, which is why I really want to give a shout out to the mid-levels, to the MPs, to the PAs, to the people who don't get paid maybe as much as the doctors do, but are the ones the patients see the most.
Right.
Just like our clinical research coordinators. And again, nothing negative toward anybody. I mean, this is a tough time to be in the medical field. And there's a lot of large companies buying up everything. It's like a Hoover vacuum cleaner. So hospitals are being bought up by large entities and they're no longer community owned. Colorado has one left, and that's in Boulder, and thankfully for us, they're one of our consortium members, and I love working with those folks, and I want them to continue. But it's a tough field to be in, I think.
It is. It's becoming, I've been in the medical, I haven't been in the cancer world specifically. I had a blood clot when I was pregnant, and I went to Cancer Centers of America. And so I was in that world a little bit, but many other medical realms. And it is tough. I appreciate you saying that. And sometimes, I need to hear that I overlook the struggles that everyone else is going through, and it's not always on the patient side. And it is there. The nurses for me have worked so endlessly, and they are there. And again, we talk about community every single day, and that is completely where your heart and soul is with you personally. I can feel it, and with your organization. It's to get to know the person in front of you, and how can we help you, and not be, sometimes checking the boxes and on you go. So I appreciate you taking the time, because I know how involved that is. And it can be lots of sleepless nights. And so for you and to your team and everyone that you thanked, that was so gracious of you. Because it really is a team effort for sure in a lot of situations.
I was actually hoping to ask something. A listener actually came in with a question, because radiation was mentioned a little while ago, and it seems that chemo and radiation is so devastating to the body, and the listener actually was wondering if when you do with these trials and these research and everything like that, wondering if do you guys have these trials and research that go other routes besides going these routes that are so harmful to the body, and exploring on that? Is that a big part of it?
That's a really good question. Let me just say about radiation, it has gotten so finely tuned. The one group that we've just partnered with in California, they can target the radiation now. Now, not everybody has access to that yet, but they can target what needs to be killed and save what doesn't. But some of these trials are to come up with something that doesn't involve radiation. So there's novel therapies, there's targeted therapy in other realms than just radiation. And then, looking a lot at biomarkers, at early prevention. I can't say enough about that. But yes, there are other options. And radiation has gotten a bad rap for good reasons over the years. And I was super excited about this team in California because they have the highest end machinery you can get. I mean, they have one of their machines you can only get as a private entity. There's only one private enterprise that has it, and they're it. Wow. You'd find a machine like that in a hospital or in an academic setting. So but that's a very good question from the listener, and radiation is scary, but it's not as scary as it used to be, like many of these things we're discussing.
Okay.
Do you foresee that that technology can be more readily available, or is that many years down the road? Sorry,
that might be the hardest question.
I'm sorry.
No.
I tend to do that.
No. I mean, I think in large settings, it will be available, maybe in 5 years. In smaller settings, again, this is that thing where you'll have to go somewhere to get that, and not all insurance, which is a whole other topic, will cover some of these things. And so one thing that I do like about the studies, a set of studies that we have access to that no one else does unless you are an NCORP, part of the NCI, is cancer care delivery research studies. And those studies look at life with cancer, not the cancer itself, but what is it like to live with cancer, financial toxicity, time toxicity, sexual relations, physical ineptitude because you have neuropathy. And, like if you have neuropathy and it's bad, you can't mow your lawn. You can't cook. It's dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so those studies are looking at asking patients quality of life kinds of questions. And I think that's very important. I just presented on a panel in April, and it was supposed to be on financial toxicity, and I added time toxicity because I've listened to people talk, and it takes them 3 times as long to get ready to go somewhere as it does me. I don't know how they get their shoes on the right feet, honestly. When I hear some of their stories, they lose their jobs sometimes. They don't have daycare anymore because they can't afford it. It is tough. And then they have to travel someplace. They don't have the money. Now, more and more studies are including mileage and lodging for them so that they can come from Montrose to Denver if they need to. But again, you got to know about those studies.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does. It branches in a lot. I mentioned to you, I've been involved in nonprofits for more than 30 years, and it is far reaching. You know, I think a lot of sometimes people don't understand that there are so many different branches of a nonprofit that are involved, and even the networking. You know, you have your team and the business model, but like you said, the patient and the people have so many different things, like time for sure, financial, then health, the emotional aspect. Who do you find, the resources? I mean, there's so many with that. So again, I want to go back to just thanking you and thanking your team for everything that you are doing and really looking at the individuals as people instead of just a number. I think sometimes a lot of, especially in the health world or just in general, we can lose that human aspect of it.
And I love how you said one of the biggest things is just like when you talk to your doctors, say, are there studies? Are there research? Just asking that question just to make sure out there. And yeah, thank you again for everything. It's such a pleasure to have you in here. And I do want to ask, how can people get involved and even support the organization, even spread the word, or, you know, somebody is listening in who unfortunately has somebody going through something. How can they get involved in this, in contacting you? Well, your organization, of course. But.
No, actually, I was going to say contact me. So when you go on our website, all of our email addresses are under our pictures, and this is what I do. I mean, you asked me earlier, I probably didn't do a good job because I'm not really ever thinking about what I do. You know, you just do it. But building relationships, getting people into if we can't help them, we'll find somebody who can. We can always use volunteers. I'd like to talk to people about board membership if that's something they're interested in. Donations are always helpful, and I love to meet people who want to hear more about the organization and might be interested in being involved as a financial partner. And then we do have a couple of fundraisers. But truly, if someone has, you know, questions about how to get more involved, it's just Switzer at westernstatesncorp.org, and it's under my picture. And I would love to talk to anybody about that. And as I know the limits of my knowledge, but I have vast resources as a result of that. So I'm happy to connect people where I can.
Speaking about a fundraiser, you have a golf tournament coming up, is that right?
Yes, you know, we're a nonprofit.
If I can mention that.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm a golfer, so I figured, you guys have the tournament coming up. Yeah.
We do. This year it's at Arrowhead, so we're pretty excited about
Beautiful
that.
Course.
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I'm not a golfer, and I just worry about those balls ricocheting off of those red rocks, but it's beautiful. And that's August 5th. And again, that's all over our website. So we're still taking registrations until the middle of next week. So if anybody's interested in that, it's a great opportunity. And then in September, we have something called Rock with the Docs. And that's a very different kind of thing. As you both know, I'm a musician. So I heard about this patient who had worked with our principal investigator, who was part of a band, and the band had 3 doctors in it. So he's a cancer survivor, and then these 3 doctors were somehow they all hooked up, and we went to hear them play, and I was like, oh, these guys are pretty good for a cover band. And I learned that they will only perform gratis for nonprofits. They will not take money. So then I started thinking about my other connections, and my good friend Jeff Hurlbert, who owns Clancy's in Wheat Ridge, said, I'll do that for you for free. So we've done this will be our 7th year. It's a very low price point of $45, and it's called Rock with the Docs because the doctors are in the band, and everybody who comes gets, right? I know it wasn't all that clever, but I thought it was at the time. That's why it got called Rock with the Docs. And everybody who comes, you get 2 free drinks, 2 appetizers, and the music, and it's just straight up. This is honestly, I can say one fundraiser I've done in my whole career that we get all the money. Nobody who provides anything takes
Wow.
any money for it because they're that committed to what we do.
That is amazing. Okay. Wow. That's unheard of.
It
I'm
really
a little bit
is,
in
I
shock.
know.
That's wonderful. That's nonprofit right there at work.
Yes, it
100%. That's amazing. Well, thank you to everyone who's contributing to that. And we're so grateful and humbled to be, involved and partnered with you now. And for those of you that are listening, and I know a lot of our listeners are golfers, we will be at Drive for the Cure, the golf tournament on the 5th of August, broadcasting live. We're going to be interviewing people there. So hopefully some of your staff will come over. If you're golfing and want to come say hi to us. So again, that's August 5th at Arrowhead in Littleton. That was one of the most beautiful courses in Colorado. So we're super excited. And you need to register before July 24th. So definitely get on the website and go do that. And then Rock with the Docs is September 6th. And that's at Clancy's, correct?
In Wheat
Okay.
Ridge.
In Wheat Ridge. Perfect. Okay. So if you want to get involved, help donate, get out in the community and have some fun, those are some 2 great fundraising opportunities and 2 events that you can be a part of. And again, we're going to have all of this information on our website, and they can get in touch with you. Again, I'll give you the phone number, 303-777-2663. And then the overall website is westernstatesncorp.org. And again, you can go to k4coradio.com on our Facebook page or our website, and we will have all of your information there as well. Well, Lisa, thank you so much. This was very enlightening, very educational and inspiring. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we sign off?
Well, I just want to thank you both. I was really excited when I heard about your mission and your true desire to be part of the community, because as the world gets bigger and more complicated, it is the people you know who are going to help you make things happen. And I believe that greatness comes when great minds come together, and they're not always in big think tanks or in political offices. So thank you so much for having me, for the work that you do. And again, I just underscore, I'm on the website. Anybody who's listening, please contact me. I will do my best to help you get connected to what you need to get connected with. And if you're interested in being involved in our organization, I will take you to lunch.
Nice.
Or dinner. No
Ooh.
breakfast. I don't do breakfast.
No breakfast? Okay. I like it. I'm always down for some good food, so I appreciate that. Well, Lisa, again, thank you for coming. Those that are catching the end of this, we will have the full interview up on our YouTube page here after a couple days. You can always go to k4coradio.com to see that. Again, we've been talking with Lisa Switzer with Western States Cancer Research. And thank you all for tuning in and for listening in. And we're going to leave you with more amazing music. And again, tune in actually around 5:30. I believe we have another interview with a gentleman down under who's a musician on our rotation. So thanks again for listening to K4CORadio.com. You have a wonderful radio. I almost had it. K4CO Radio. You have a wonderful